So Nic Bottomley is the co-owner of Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights in Bath, England, an independent bookshop that has twice been named UK Independent Bookshop of the Year, or has it more than twice? Twice?
No, I think twice been named Independent Bookshop of the Year. We have been lucky enough to be kind of shortlisted on other occasions as well, but yeah.
Okay. Prior to setting up shop with his wife, Juliette, in 2006, he was a capital markets lawyer. So how did that inform what you do today?
That's a good question. The main thing that we took was the attention to detail and kind of rigor that you get drilled into you when you train with a big law firm, actually. So at the time, yeah, I guess we just had that sort of professionalism that you need to run any business, and particularly, I think, a business where you've really got to have your wits about you because there's a lot of adversity to the trading conditions that you're going to operate in. So it means that where lots of people have a dream of setting up a bookshop and manage to pursue that dream, you know, the bookshop itself needs to look however you want it to look, but often they look charming, they look, you know, homely, they might, lots of soft words, you know, but underneath it, I think you have to have quite a disciplined approach because it's a tough industry to actually thin margins and a tough industry to make a living in. So I think it gave us the stuff that's underneath that you don't see when you walk into the shop, but that you need in order to be able to run a business. And separately, it gave me, and I'm sure Juliette, my wife, would say the same, it gave us a work ethic that meant that if we had to work extremely long hours to make it work in the early days of the shop especially, then we were happy to do that, especially as we were doing it on our own terms this time.
Right. So you were on your honeymoon in Seattle, and it was the Elliott Bay Bookstore that captured your attention, and you talked about their verve and atmosphere and personality. Can you define that precisely? What was that personality?
Yeah, you walked into their store, and it's still the same, even though the location is different, because I went to see it again for the first time in 19 years, just earlier this year. You walk into their store, and the place does have a personality. There's a place. So first of all, that's physical. It's very wooden, their shop. Their bookshelves, their tables, it's got this very sort of warm wood that they use. So there's something about the base of it, and it was full of, immediately you could see corners that you knew there were more books around. There were little staircases up here, there, and everywhere. There's little nooks, there's little indents. There's lots of places to get lost in the book. So that's the physical thing. But the other thing about the personality is, as soon as you walk in, there is opinion about books being spread around everywhere. So you've got notices on the shelves. You've got things on the tables themselves that are very I don't know, that tell you why they created the books. Yeah, but they explain why books are there. Why is this range of books on this table? Some theme or whatever. And then the final thing, and the most important thing that I now know, is the fact that the booksellers, come to you and offer you the opportunity to talk about books, or to be shown books, or to be taken to books. You don't have to go to them, they come to you.
Right. And it's so fascinating because, I've been to thousands and thousands of bookstores in the last 10 to 15 years, well, longer than that. And I'm the kind of person who, I don't want to be bugged when I go into a bookstore. I just want to browse myself. Mm-hmm. And yet, having read about your shop, it's almost I've sort of retroactively now wishing maybe I'd engaged a little bit more, because first of all, I just don't want to be bugged to buy something. I just want to browse for books on my own and find something. But you're saying that here's an opportunity to really learn about books from someone. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know about learn about. I feel it's more bilateral actually, or more even than learning about. But what I'm saying is that, so first of all, I love the thrill of the chase, the thrill of the hunting myself as well when I'm in a bookstore. But what we want to do is give everyone the opportunity to talk about books with people
Mhm.
who we only have booksellers who love books. I hire all sorts of different people. I've got people from all kinds of different backgrounds. However, there's one thing in common. They love books and they know how to hold a conversation. They know how to talk about books.
Right.
That's the two things. Everything else I can learn. If they can't use computers very well, we can work out a way. If they, whatever, if they've got marketing skills or other, I don't know, all kinds of skills these days, social media, everything, all of it can benefit. But the thing you have to have is a love of books and the ability to talk about it. So everyone who comes into our shop is given that opportunity. And I'll admit, sometimes because it's drilled into our DNA, not because they've been told in a kind of corporate way, you must sort of say a certain phrase. But anytime any of our team are going to walk through, if they see someone, perusing, they're going to say, "Hey, are you okay browsing, or do you want a recommendation? Do you need help, or whatever their version of that engagement is?" So some people will maybe get a little irritated by having been asked 2 or 3 times. But I take the view, I always say to the team, it is way better that you've asked somebody a couple too many times if you can be of help, or if you can recommend a
Right.
book, or
Yeah.
than if you've ignored them the whole time they're there. I mean,
Right.
on the balance, it's tough always to get the balance exactly right. If the same person's on the shop floor, then you will get the balance right. So if I'm on the shop floor and someone's made it clear that they don't want, and they want to just browse by themselves, that's 100% fine. It probably still, when they bring whatever they've chosen to the counter, if I've got a view on it, or if I've got it, then I'll probably still chip in. And in terms of the thing about, yeah, you're right about, nobody wants to feel they're being sold things, but I do think that books are a little bit different. I do think that we don't mind whether somebody, if someone has a budget for a book to come into a bookshop. We have a lot of young people, we have a lot of all kinds of people coming, a lot of tourists who have no room in their baggage. We don't mind. We'd still rather we were giving them a recommendation genuinely for another day, for another time.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
like this, here's another one. Next time we'll write it on a bookmark. Have a think about this, because we just want people to be spending the time when they're reading books that are right for them. And often we've got a view on that just because of the number of conversations we've had. And also we get some of the books we've sold the most have originated from recommendations been given by a customer to us through those
Right.
conversations.
Okay. So when you were in Seattle, you then decided, okay, if we set up our own bookstore, this could make for a really interesting, fulfilling career.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just had a conversation with my friend Jeff Deutsch out of
Mm-hmm.
Chicago,
Yep.
who's written a book in
Mm.
praise of good bookshops
Yeah.
or stores. And in it, he says, there's no way you can build a career in this field.
Mm.
He's saying that the whole retail model is broken
Mm-hmm.
because these salaries are so piss poor.
Mm-hmm.
But you are saying the opposite.
Well, I don't disagree that the model is broken. I don't disagree that margins are so small that it is extremely difficult to make a living from bookselling. And I would wish that we and everyone in our industry could pay all the people who work with us and ourselves more money for the effort. Certainly, if anyone is going to map time put in to bookshop ownership and then work out their hourly rate, they're not going to be happy. And in terms of, and when it comes to the people you employ, certainly I would love there to be more margin in the business so that we could pay everyone more for the passion that they put in. And a lot of that is structurally connected with, Jeff goes into this, I think, a lot in the book, all the different reasons. But it's structurally connected to the way our industry is. In the UK, for sure, it's also more lodged in the imbalance between huge online businesses and the playing field they operate on, and then the skewed effect that has on margin capabilities within the industry, and et cetera, et cetera. But also it's factors that are not specific to the book industry. It's the business rate, the business rate system, which is definitely not fit for purpose, and obviously,
real estate,
and a lot of other factors, and obviously the ecosystem of the high street coming under threat from so many different things, plus those macro things that we're now dealing with, like cost of living crisis, pandemic, etc. So it's not easy. But what I don't love the narrative that it's not possible. I think, Juliette and I started just two of us. We had some really great help as well for a while from Juliette's brother, Harvey, who was instrumental in helping us build the shop up as well. We happened to tie in for a couple of years where it was really useful that he was able to help us. And, now we have 20 members of staff. So we are providing a living for 20 people of varying, levels. And would I wish that we could add X% more onto everyone's salary so that it was being remunerated to the level of skill that, I think it should, of course. And would I prefer to, be able to take a bit more home for our family, that I might be equivalent to the, not equivalent to the old world I was working in, or where I would have got to if I'd stuck in that world, but somewhere nearer, then yeah. But I do think it's possible to have a rewarding career, a very rewarding career. And I do think that we have to change the narrative that it's a sort of, this thing of people saying, oh, no one has ever, made money from book selling. It is possible to make a little money and at the same time be very happy.
I mean, that's funny. Today I seem to be wanting to make connections between what you've done and what I do. But I've had this podcast for 10 or 12 years, hardly made any money at all. But thankfully, I was in the communications business prior to doing this, making probably 15 to 20 times the money doing similar things to what I'm doing in books. But it's been way more fulfilling.
Yeah. And fulfillment's a really important part of it. I bet Jeff would say the same. I don't think we should give up on long term the structure of these things, aspiring that the structure of these things also enables people to be remunerated better for this kind of fulfilling work. There is an imbalance, and we should all aspire to shift that dial over time. But I think it takes people who are willing to, for that to take some time, and you have to be kind of creative in order to do it.
Well, and I think that's probably why you've won these awards. I mean, this was the thing that you brought up when I met you briefly in Prague at the Rise Bookselling Conference.
Oh, yeah.
You were talking about your book spas. Perhaps you could just, I know you've probably done it a million times, but if you don't mind telling the audience what they're about, because I just think they make so much sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reading spa, we created it fairly early on because we realized that when we set up the bookshop, when it was much smaller than now, the thing that really people were coming back to, and the reason why we were getting some good word of mouth traction, was for this idea that we were nice people to talk to about books, and that we were good at recommending. And maybe the recommendations were just a little less kind of obvious or a little off pitch than, the things that you saw front and center in every shop, which lots of indies are good at. And so we thought, well, how can we make that into something that people can purchase? So we created the reading spa. And the way it works is that you purchase a voucher, on our website, over the counter, however. And it's most often for a gift, although people do self-gift it. And it entitles the person who's received it to book in a time with us on a weekday to come in and sit, and they spend 20 or 30 minutes talking one-on-one with one of our booksellers. So we ask them at the time they book in to tell us a little bit about what they like reading, just a little bit, just to make sure we don't put our sci-fi fantasy expert on a reading spa with a Bloomsbury set loving reader. for
That'll
example.
be more of a jar than a spar.
Yeah. So we put them. We sit down. There's tea and cake, and we talk.
I
We
thought it
talk
was a
about
bit
books.
more than 20 minutes. I thought it was more
No,
like
no, no. It
6.
is. It is. So
Oh, sorry.
the initial bit is 20 minutes, just finding out
Yeah.
what they like reading. You know, really
Okay.
talking to them about it. And
Yeah.
usually it just turns into a really pleasant, interesting conversation about books between what they
Yeah.
like, what they don't like. Few other questions that we like to always ask. And then the person from our side, the bookseller, is going to go off, leave them alone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and go and gather books that have been prompted by that conversation that we think that
Right.
individual is going to enjoy.
Very good.
Not usually, in exactly the same territory, but dancing around the edges of the kind of, recommendations, parallels that we might make. In any genre, we do, we've got everything covered. And it's whether people love reading, for pure escapism or for educate, whatever they want from the way they read. And then we go up and then we talk about those books and we, describe those books and we say why, we like them and why we think they might be relevant. And then we leave the person alone and they have a voucher as part of their gift that's going to mean they can take away, 6 or 7 books or something. Within that, obviously, they're also very free to then buy in addition. And they get a little goodie bag as well, with a cloth bag, a tote bag and a mug and things like that.
T-shirt? You get a T-shirt?
They don't get
T-shirt?
a T-shirt. We have got T-shirts. We don't put it in
Oh,
with the
yeah.
price of it at the moment, but yeah. But they get a little goodie bag to go away with. And we make a customer connection. That's the most important thing. Somebody who's likely going to buy this for someone else, who's going to, if not, it's going to go away with the books that they wanted and probably a list of others that we've recommended that they might then pass on to other people. And invariably, those people might buy them through us. But we make a customer connection. That's the most important thing. And we also, the chances are that person, they may not come back for another reading spa, although some people do come back for multiple times, but they are likely to think of our store again as a place they want to visit and go and get their recommendations. So it's not all about the impact of the sale of the reading spa. It's about the longer process. And I mean, it's, I've never hidden what we do. We talk to it about, I know that when I speak to other bookshops, I spoke to a few at that conference in Prague and a few people, and I think there were even comments from one of my fellow panelists, the brilliant Raluca, who runs I was going to try and pronounce it in Romanian, but I'm going to do a bad job. But it's essentially called the Two Owls Bookshop in Timișoara in Romania. And
Okay.
I think, and she said, look, she was kind of talked about how sort of scary it seemed to do the reading spa, like even to her as a brilliant bookseller, how difficult that would be to manage and set up. And it certainly is something, there's a reason why we have a higher percentage than most bookstores of our costs go on staffing, because
Right.
it complicates your timetabling. You need to always have but here's the other thing it does. It provides a backdoor permanent ongoing training session for all of your booksellers, right? Because you're not always just going to do reading spas with those people who are in exactly the same reading taste as you. They might have a core of their reading where you're the person that makes most sense to do that reading spa. But the most
Yeah.
obvious person may not be on work that day. They may be off sick. Or the core of it could be exactly what you read, but then they might also be massively interested in 19th century gardening or something. So you better
Right.
have touchstone books, not necessarily that you read, but you better have a kind of touchstone books, at least something that you can
Yeah.
lean on to say, hey, I don't read this particular area that you talked about, but my colleague Sam does. And I know if he were here, he'd really recommend this. I'm not going to pretend to tell you too much about it because this one I haven't read, but here's what Sam always tells me to do, so there's those little bits. So it kind of just improves the way you communicate and it improves the way you build the recommendation knowledge. It's like it builds the hive mind.
Well, I
And
mean,
it's great fun.
Well, I was going to say it's a parallel business. It's a consulting business that you can offer up a whole bunch of clients that are already engaged. They're qualified already. The customers that come into your door are qualified customers. They're potential clients of this new service. I just don't understand why everyone isn't offering this. I mean, again, maybe it's, as you say, the expertise. You need to find some really smart people who love talking about books.
You do
Maybe
need
that's
people.
not so easy. I don't
I
know.
I think it's not always easy, or at least it's not the first thing. It's not the first thing you're going to, yeah, for us, it's probably become easier the longer we've been in business and the longer the reputation of the shop is established. But it's maybe not so easy. It's not so easy in every town. We know recruiting's not easy, and maybe also it's not the easiest thing to do for the first time. You have to sort of throw yourself into it.
Right.
There has to be a bit of a leap of faith, and it's one of those things, we all think of things. There are things that I haven't done that I would love that. You mentioned t-shirts earlier. So we've been for like 3 years, we've been saying we've got to improve our merchandise every time we go and visit the American, but actually different thing completely. But there's loads of slightly complicated conversations with different producers of things. And it just takes so long sometimes to do these things. So if you start and think, if you're a slightly smaller store than us and you've got a fairly, your business is running, on tight margins, especially when time is concerned. The idea of introducing something like this is I understand, slightly daunting. I guess the one that people have done more, the thing that this led us then into the subscription side, which again, we do a very tailored subscription. It's very spa-like. We choose in books for our individual subscribers. I guess people have done that a bit more. I think other stores have recognized that the subscription model is a good gift to have. Although again, some take a slightly more, kind of, oh, here's our book of the month approach rather than getting into the tailoring it. But yeah, these things, they take, they take a lot of time to set up, and they take a lot of time to organize.
Well, they should be seen as a separate business almost. Perhaps if you can.
It's definitely a separate product. And yeah, it's sort of, it kind of is. Yeah.
I mean, you do have a room called the biblio-therapy room, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could be offering bibliotherapy as sort of a part of this package here. It's like, I mean, I don't know if you just don't want to get too far away from the actual selling of books, I suppose. Is that it?
I guess the thing is that bibliotherapy is a term that in the United States especially is used very technically, and it really gets into it's a part or an adjunct to
hospitals.
We are not qualified by I don't know whether anyone can what the qualification is medically for that, but we do not profess. We use the phrase bibliotherapy, and we're very clear about it in a much more mainstream way, in the sense that we all recognize that there is a huge amount of personal benefit to be had from being readers and connecting. So I think we position the reading spa as something that is primarily about relaxation. That's the spa bit, right? This is time to sit and talk about your hobby.
Too, right?
Yeah,
exactly. I couldn't escape that. I mean,
no, there's that, and we even have a bathtub in the store, which is converted into a books table. So yeah, we keep that whole thing going. But I think, I think it's important for us. It's really important, and it's become increasingly important the longer we've had the shop, that the shop and the reading spa as well, despite its fancy name, is for anyone potentially. So I've done reading spas with people who read 120 books a year. And I've done reading spas. I did a reading spa once with one gentleman, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, who sat down and he said, look, someone got me this gift. It was an act of kindness by them in return for an act of kindness that I did to them. I have read 5 books in my life, and this man was definitely long past retirement age. It's like, I don't really know what we're going to talk about. So I then had a 20-minute conversation. We had a 20-minute, maybe 30-minute conversation, fascinating, about his life and what he did like. And in the end, I brought him some books down. The man loved football. We talked about football a lot. I brought him a book that was not a kind of biography of some footballer, but a book about how people can get passionate about small town football and what have you. There were all these different examples and of just things that reflected his life. And he kind of said, he just wanted a book that, if I knew nothing about anyone, what is a book that someone who doesn't read might just sit and, might get something from and enjoy. So with that, we kind of went down that route. And I love that. Yeah. I love that it's for everyone.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, first of all, how are you going to enrich your life? Well, try and figure out what you're passionate about and do it as you've said. This is what you've lived. But the other thing is, and this is what I'm doing, it's just trying to figure out why I'm so damn passionate about books. And I just, this is what anyone should do about whatever they've got this real interest in. And there's a book connected to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, that's it. Books, we've seen it, especially through the pandemic. People can want to read for so many reasons. And what one person means by relaxing reading or escapism, you can't make a list. We do, but you can't, of escapist books, because an escapist book for one person means something where everything is sunny and light and happy. But an escapist book for someone else could be a horror novel, or it could be learning about something really quite complex, but that's just nothing to do with what they do in their day-to-day life.
Well, and couldn't you package this book spa as learn about your passion?
Yeah, you could. We talked about, we've talked before about doing events, that are sort of like given subject 101, kind of. I think we do that really when we make lists of books and when we do it with themed displays and what have you. But you're right, the reading spa could be, you could sort of, that's kind of what it is, learn about your passion. But it's for some, the only thing is then you've got the other side of the scale. Some people know a lot about their passion, and some people have read more in a given area. So then it's really, but that's another pleasure that we get from the reading spa or the subscription. We sometimes have people and they come and they say, hey, it's gonna be tough. I read like historical crime, but I am following everything. I am up on the new trends. I am maybe getting sent proofs from publishers, and then still usually we can find some things that they've not come across, and it blows people's minds. And that's because this industry,
you've got the new stuff.
We got the new stuff, but we've also got the stuff. This industry publishes so many books, and we could do a whole podcast about the sustainability of that. But this industry publishes so many books that it's not just the new stuff, it's the stuff that landed, and there's some great stuff that just had no room and never made it above even the second or third tier of when you go searching. And there are books that we have enormous market shares of because we love them, recommend them, and importantly, we soon stop if customers tell us, what do you want about? We don't know why you told us that this was great. But it'll be great, but we get great feedback on. And that just don't seem to be anywhere. They just get lost. So, yeah.
Well, I love how you put it. You say it took you a while to gain confidence in your arrogant selection. That's beautiful. You said something like your arrogant selection. In other words, you stopped carrying all these bestsellers. And you basically, this is what, I can't remember where I read it, but what you basically said was we gained confidence in the books that we think are great. And this is one of the reasons of our success.
I think that's right. I think that we still have, I always sort of make it clear, we still have those bestsellers. You're not going to have a bookshop that doesn't have some bestsellers.
No.
It's not like we're not remotely kind of snobby, for want of a better word, about the books that everyone wants to read at a given moment. However, what we do control is what we put on display. There can be
face out.
What's going to be on the table, what's going to be face out, because of course, if any of our customers happen to be wanting at the moment the book that is being talked about, whether it's a crime novel, whether it's a literary thing, whether it's a royal memoir, you need to have a copy in the shop because you want them to buy.
That's right. But you're going to have to match. You're going to have to match the rock bottom prices. No, or
no, because you don't have to, because if you do that, you will go out of business with the way that you're paying. If you're paying your staff properly, and if you're paying your rent, we can't afford the rock bottom prices from any single unit store. If you've got 100 shops, you can do it. If you've got a warehouse that's been government funded and pays a tenth of our rates, then you can do it. But that's kind of so all you can do is offer your customers so much else like, in terms of the other books that you recommend and display, and in terms of the service level you offer, that when they also want a copy of, you know, the new cookbook that is priced, you know, so silly high because it's going to be discounted elsewhere, they will add one to the basket because even though they know they could go online and buy it at half the price, because of everything else they've got from the experience occasionally. So you're only going to sell a tiny number of those books because not everyone has the means to do that and support a bookshop in that way, even if they would want to. But the important thing is that you're making your full margin on all the other books, the books that they may not have discovered without you, or the books that you're just so that they know about, but they didn't know why they should know about it, you know. So it's not all super obscure. There are plenty of books. In most of the books you go around our shop and you sort of say, yeah, I know that, I don't know that, I know that. But then it's like, oh, what's this? It's the serendipity that's in between.
Okay. I mentioned at the top that you know, I go in, I don't want to be bugged. I just want to find what I want. I want the thrill of the browse, the hunts, whatever. I get that much more in a secondhand bookstore, incidentally. But it seems to me that I could change my whole attitude toward books by saying to myself, okay, I want to have a really good conversation about books with someone who knows a lot about them, who will basically improve my life, who will, because I talk to them, will be able to come up with some book ideas that will really you know, enrich my life.
Yeah,
that's a way of looking at it. No.
Yeah. I think some people get that from it. I mean, I think those are the moments which really, you know, which are really special when you get somebody who sort of engages with it that much. And it doesn't have to be through the reading spa. Actually, when you say that, the thing I think of two things immediately. One is when you get the opportunity to talk to a young person who either hasn't found their way in to why, or is maybe a teenager who's wavering and losing their love of reading. I had a conversation with a young man over the Easter holidays, and his mum had brought him in and had said she was going to buy him 3 or 4 books, and he hadn't read anything good for, I don't know, felt like a year, and definitely all the other distractions of life and teenagedom were winning. And we had fortunately he was open to the conversation. That work had been done. Sometimes that's not always the case. He was open to the conversation, and just standing up by the table in the teen children's room area of our store, we just went all around what he'd enjoyed before, and we found him like 4 very different books, and he went away like at the counter, he was telling me what order he was going to read them in. He went away super excited. So those are the moments where you feel you really could change the path of somebody. Maybe they would fall out of love with reading and wouldn't find it again for a long time. And the other example I would give actually is, funny enough, and I don't claim credit for this, my colleague Ed, I think, should mainly get the credit for it. But we have one of my booksellers, our fiction lead now, Tom, and he came, and I don't know if he had a reading spa first or whether he just came and browsed a few times and then got a reading spa. I think he was just browsing. And he'd been a local journalist, but he mainly was working as a butcher. And he was working as a butcher, and he basically stopped reading for many years, having loved them as a younger man, but he'd fallen out of it completely. And Ed kind of got him started, sent him down into some sort of slightly offbeat, dark, small town American fiction rabbit hole.
That's what you like. You know, your blurb on your website about you, I just could not help but thinking about Nabokov's Lolita, when he's going to all these motels, you know, that the road trip that they take.
Yeah.
I mean, that just seemed to me that's what you were writing about.
I wouldn't want to ally myself too closely to Lolita, but certainly the small towns, the motels. But the thing with Tom was, just to finish that story, is that he then started reading, and he now reads 120, 130 books a year, and it's changed. He quit butchery and now works at Mr. B's, you know, leading our kind of fiction offer really, and sort of participating in the buying, the overseeing of a lot of the fiction, and just working alongside, and that is a guy you want to do a reading spa with if you want to find some new avenues. Well, I'd say that about any one of my colleagues, but in terms of the journey he went on, where he had stopped and then came into it again.
About that butchery, he really loved butchery, like doing the work.
It was the family industry. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's over
because
there. I should ask him, did he love butchery? I've got one colleague in the room. I don't think he loved it. She's shaking her head.
you know what I would recommend in that case, if he had loved it as a lover of used secondhand antiquarian books, what a beautiful thing to collect is old butchery books.
True. That's true. I don't know if he has any of those. I've got a couple of colleagues who are disturbingly interested in those sort of Victorian medical kind of fairly visceral images of autopsies and
Right.
I know I mean, there are some books with some heavy butchery in them. There is Cow, which is a Austrian novel I read, which has got an awful lot of abattoir action in it. And there is the one, isn't there? What is the one by Upton Sinclair?
Oh, yes, the jungle. No, is it the jungle?
Yes. Yeah, right. I think. Yeah. There's a few out there. Yeah. He could do you a list of butchery novels, I'm sure. In fact, I'm going to ask him to get that up there. We should do that. In fact, that's a great idea. What we should do is each of us could do a list of books based on our previous passion or career. Like, we'll make it. Some of the guys have been straight out of university into this world, so we won't say all career, but passion or career. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I can do lawyering list, no problem.
Yes, I was going to say. Here's another idea for that spa is like, let's do a career spa. Like, let's do. Hey, you want to know all the great books in your career?
Yeah,
let's sit down.
So this is something
that's a fascinating thing to go after.
So we do work a little bit because of the way our website works and because of the list and because of all our subscriptions. We do some work with some businesses along those lines. So, for example, we have there's one business I work with who wanted to pull together a list of 25 books around leadership for their kind of middle managers. So we provide a kind of service where their team can buy them online. They don't get charged right away. We build a company. So we've done things like that, and definitely. We do get asked that. I tell you what comes up more often than career on the shop floor is people writing a dissertation, or, we often get grad students coming in and saying, hey, I'm writing about, I don't know, representations of a given subject in an obscure field of fiction or something. And we end up doing a bit of hive mind on that.
Right. Well, I mean, I was in the communications business and I loved getting books on propaganda.
Right.
It seems to me that this is a huge opportunity for bookstores to put another service in front of clients that have already been qualified or potential clients.
The first thing I would love to see, if I'm totally honest, when I go into other bookstores is just the first step of it, which is, my other job is sort of helping chair the Booksellers Association. So there's no one who champions all the other shops, all my fellow booksellers more than I. But I will say this, I am almost always slightly amazed at how infrequently I get actively offered a recommendation when I'm in a bookshop.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Yes, same thing. I've been doing this for my whole life. And in terms of someone coming up to me and saying, oh, I see that you're interested in this section here. Did you know? I don't even know that. I don't know that I've ever had that happen to me.
No. And I mean, I've definitely, I've gone up to counters. I've started conversations. I do know of many individual booksellers who do take this approach. So I'm not saying it's not being done, and I can think of the names of many who do this brilliantly, and bookstore owners as well. But it's not as common as it should be. It, for me, is the single biggest thing you can do to increase the reputation of your bookshop and to increase your sale and to increase your sales. To say to people, "Would you like a recommendation?" Even just that simple. If the answer is no, then that's fine. At least the person feels welcome. Yeah. They feel welcome in your shop. They know you're there if they change their mind. That's it. But
I have most of my conversations after I bought a book, and and they're great, but and maybe that's my demeanor, and maybe I don't know what percentage of customers come in that don't want to be bugged. I wonder what it is.
I don't know. It's very, very often that it's very infrequent that we would notice. I mean, obviously some people might not tell us that we would feel that people felt that way. Like that, we have a lot of, we have quite shyer, quieter, regular customers who, notwithstanding those personality traits, or also, just all very independent-minded ones, notwithstanding those personality traits, they keep coming back. So it's, and like I said, we don't force it on people. We don't force it on people.
No,
And sometimes
no.
you have a conversation with someone, sure, and you say, hey, the book you've chosen, really love it. Here's an author for next time. And they just say, but they don't want to continue that conversation. That's absolutely fine. But,
Yeah.
this is something that happens in America in a much better way. In Britain, there is an awful amount.
Yeah,
We
I don't know
tend,
about that.
well, listen, I think we
I've
in
spent
Britain,
a lot of time in American bookstores, and I'm the same thing holds. There's nothing I would love more than someone to come up to me and sort of engage in a conversation about books, because that's what I love doing the most. And it doesn't happen as often as you might
yeah.
suggest.
But I think in America they get over the first hurdle, which is
Right.
it is drilled in to base level American customer service. And I think in Britain, people write it off as being, oh, it's scripted, it's false, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong, in my opinion, in most cases. I mean, I'm not talking about in a huge mall store in a big city. I'm talking about more generally, and certainly in small town bookstores. But, they at least engage, and they at least
Yes.
welcome people in a more, and are more likely to, now you're right that then do they go the other bit of actually then giving some kind of opportunity for a conversation that involves expertise? Perhaps that's not widespread either. But I just sometimes think that there is a British way that is outdated of thinking I'm just going to say hello and keep my head down.
And wait for them. Yeah.
Wait for them. And I think you can find a happy middle ground. And
Yeah.
lots of bookstores do it, but lots of brilliant bookstores don't do it as much as they could.
I was just in Milan, and I interviewed a woman who runs a bookseller school there.
Oh, really?
And
Great.
I'd never heard of such a thing. Apparently there's quite a tradition in Germany, but
yeah, there is a qualification, I think, in Germany, isn't there?
Yes, that's right. Yes. It seems to me that there could be space for some sort of bookselling school because this is exactly what you said. When you started up your bookstore, you said it was surprisingly difficult to find out stuff like how books are distributed, a good financial model, stuff like that. Is this? I think that it has improved. Okay.
Yeah,
it just seems to me that there could be some sort of training for people who are more than just running around the shop bugging people.
Yeah. So the things that have improved on that are, there is no formal qualification. It is something has been discussed quite regularly, especially at the Booksellers Association. What we developed at the Booksellers Association, which started when I had my kind of 2-year presidency of that, but then has been continued by Merrill Halls, who's the managing director, and others there, is a learning development program, which is sort of a modular kind of, at the moment, it's mainly content you can look at online at your own leisure, and it's peer-to-peer. So, lots of us as booksellers are putting on things on given different subject areas that can then be shared with bookshop owners. And then it's fairly nascent. So, now it's getting to the point where bookshop owners are now trying to work out ways to disseminate that to their teams. There's a lot of resource I want my team to see. It's just about how you kind of find the right flow through it. So that's one thing. We have talked about a more formal qualification, but the other thing that does exist is a great course called something like an introduction to owning and running a bookshop. And it's run by Patrick Neal, who was a senior manager at Waterstones and then set up his great bookshop, Jaffe and Neal, together with his wife. And that's in Chipping Norton in Gloucestershire.
You can only find a town named Chipping Norton, and I love.
Yeah, you knew that was British, right?
Anyway,
and but his bookstore is great, and he talks to a lot of people, and that's accessible. And here's an interesting thing: that's accessible to people who are thinking of setting up a bookshop, people who have just set up a bookshop, and even people who just want to get into the industry and learn more. It's not prohibitively expensive or anything. It's fairly well subsidized course. In fact, I've got a bookseller who's going to begin their career in bookselling with us from Tuesday. next week, and
Yeah.
she is the first time I've ever had a candidate for a job who's actually had decided to take that course herself, because she was really trying to learn about the industry. So she took that course, and that's not the sole reason she got the job. We interviewed lots of people, but it was certainly a really great thing to see that somebody was, because lots of people want to go into bookselling from lots of other areas, and a lot of the time when you're working out, when you're hiring, you're thinking, how much is this person dedicated to this? How much is this person going to enjoy this? Is it, you're almost second guessing how much their skills going to transfer. That's a really interesting thing that somebody had taken the decision to do that course.
Yes.
Still, like anything, it's still a confusing industry to get into when you're first trying to figure out how books are distributed. I mean, but there are resources now.
Well, it seems to me that if you can kind of wed the book spa idea to some sort of training, that this could be an answer to the broken model. That maybe, I mean, you're the one who lives it. I'm just the one that cottoned on or became aware of the program and thought, holy shit, this could be offered by every bookstore.
We certainly don't think bookselling, we think that it's a very difficult industry. We think that there are lots of systemic things that are broken, but we don't feel that bookselling is broken. We feel that bookselling is in very rude health, and that we've got a really engaged, enjoyable way of doing it that both customers love and that booksellers love. So, and also, it gives it, and it's a great kind of personal development tool for booksellers. And another thing, because of the structure of our business, because of the reading spas, because people always need time within their timetable to do choose books for subscribers, we have that then filters through into the way our whole timetable work for our individuals. So I don't have, for example, one person who does goods in. I have a team of a bunch of my booksellers have goods in as one of their occasional roles.
As what, sorry?
As one of their occasional roles. So somebody might be, so one of my booksellers might have a timetable that in a 5-day week, this is just pure, for example, where 2 of those days or 3 of those days, they're on the shop floor, and that's what they're focusing on. Another of their days, they might be looking after our website customers or our customers on email and the telephone. Another of their days, they might be doing goods in. Another of their days, they might be choosing. Goods in, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's another classic example of why our industry is impenetrable, because I've just used a phrase I think in American bookstores, they call it receiving.
Right? Okay.
Getting the books.
What is that?
It's when the books arrive, so I don't know, at some time very soon from now when we're recording this, a truck is going to show up with 16 boxes of books from lots of different places, and they all need to be scanned in, allocated, check the sections are allocated. If necessary, then passed to be sent out to a distant customer or put on the shelf ready to be collected, et cetera, et cetera. So the shop floor team are taking care of the customers on the shop floor. They're taking care of rotating displays. Person doing goods in is in an office, and they're taking care of all of that side of the business, so bringing the books in, making sure that they're in the right place to be shelved. Someone else is looking after the customers that are not in the store, that are contacting us through the website, through email. Someone else is choosing books for our subscribers or for their portion of our subscribers. Someone else is doing a reading spa. What you've got is a lot of different, someone else, of course, and these are more occasional, but then someone else is planning or pitching for events, doing the marketing. There are so many aspects to this job, and there are so many. Another reason it's not broken is because you can skill up people. It's not easy, but you can try and develop different little skills in people. So either that will help them continue to grow in your organization, or that will help them in future career paths. So all of that doesn't kind of strike. That's why I think this is a great business to be in and a great career. It's very varied. A lot of jobs in offices where people see a traditional career path are very one-dimensional, and there's nothing one-dimensional about bookselling, and in particular, if the shop floor part is all based around building knowledge, book knowledge, and sharing book knowledge.
Yeah, it seems to me that what Jeff is saying in his book, it's about the browse. It's about the browse, which is not necessarily proactive. It's putting together a space that you can come into and have an interesting browsing experience versus come into and have an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to have a space that can work for both, especially at busy times. The conversation obviously percentage drops a little because if you've got a shop, Christmas time, you have less time to spend with each customer. You do need a space that's browsable, but the browsing should be interactive, or it should have that possibility. And people are the single biggest asset that any bookshop has. The people that are working for you. You need to weaponize that.
Yeah, well, you could basically monetize it.
Yeah, of course. That's what, maybe that's the ex-lawyer in me.
Weaponize is more aggressive than monetize.
It is, yeah, but no, but it is a lot more. But a law firm, charges for their people skills.
Yes, I know.
And bookshops have some incredibly
you got the best people,
knowledgeable, skilled people who also, generally speaking, love what they're talking about, compared to someone who's selling one TV over another TV.
And as you say, I mean, then you can leave people like me to come in and do my browsing, and maybe, you could approach them. But then you have also all over your store, you've got all these, promoting the fact that you can actually pay to have this very cool experience.
Yeah. And I mean, you can, even if you don't charge for it, even if that seems like it's difficult to organize, you should certainly put the highest value on it. Other booksellers said to me, but how do you manage all the other stuff if your booksellers are spending so long talking to your customers? But there is no task of all the tasks we're doing that I would rather a bookseller was doing than having a conversation with a customer.
Yeah.
Now that might be on an email sometimes, but most likely it's on the shop floor. That's the most valuable thing anyone can do.
And the amount of money that lawyers charge for their time is ridiculous compared to what you guys are doing. How much does a spa cost?
I mean, a spa costs £95, but that includes £60 of books and a goodie bag. So basically, we're not charging very much for the incidental
charging more than
recommendation time. I know. Well, it was cheaper in the old days, but like everything got more expensive. So. Yeah, and it's I guess we do want it to be something that can still be gifted, and we like it to be affordable as well, even though I fully recognize that that's not affordable for everyone. But we like it to have value. We believe it's a very good value product.
It sounds like it.
And you need to have it for it to work. You do need you need it to be a certain price because people need to take away. Let's say, be able to take away 5 or 6 books if they haven't got the money to top up to buy more. They want to get, so 6 paperbacks is going to take sort of 60 quid of that chunk straight away. So.
Yeah, I got 10 more minutes.
Sure.
9 more minutes. So I just want to wind down with you were on your honeymoon. You're on your honeymoon and it was sleepless in Seattle then, I'm guessing. but that you were actually staying in the San Juan Islands just north of Seattle. And as I mentioned prior to putting the recorder on, I used to go there as a kid with my father to a little town called Coopville. And people have long asked me, so what is it about books? Why are you so besotted with books? And I haven't come up with an answer other than to think that my father's behavior and him taking us into used secondhand and any kind of bookstore must have had an impact. And he actually found, it was in an antique and a bookstore, he found this beautiful, huge, big old dictionary, and I think he might even bought the lectern at the same time. And for like $4, right? So there's this idea of, hey, you don't have to pay a lot for something that's amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of that, I just want to ask you, so what is it about books?
Yeah, I don't, it's, the reason we went into it was because we just wanted to spend, 5/7, I mean, it's 7/7 for many years of our life doing something we loved and built around something we loved, and we were both lovers of books. And I guess for me,
But why were you lovers of books?
yeah. So why were we lovers of books? I always read as a kid. I kind of I was not one of these people who moved on to sort of reading highly sort of cerebral books super early. It was something I always had rather than some sort of lightning bolt moment. Like my father-in-law always taught, he grew up in a very sort of humble kind of background, urban background, no books whatsoever in his house. And he always talks about the moment where he was given a copy of Alan Moorehead's The White Nile. And it kind of blew his mind, and it changed his life. I mean, everything about his life changed. He was the one person in his family who began reading. It wasn't like that for me. I just kind of gradually, and I think probably for me, it tied in with my desire to see the world and to travel, and particularly as a teenager, my interest in America. So I kind of had posters of America on the wall. I got into studying when I was sort of 15, 16, the idea of like the American dream. We kind of covered it a bit. I had a teacher who kind of introduced to it. Maybe it was things like Gatsby, not that that's my favorite American novel by any means. But that got me into probably then people like Steinbeck and The Grapes of Wrath. And I suddenly saw then, I think, how books could kind of, especially fiction in my case, could be a really just a way of understanding the past and the present and really sensing place, in a different way to movies and TV, which of course were there as well. And so, yeah, it was that really, and I kind of managed to start traveling in the US from the age of 18 and kind of discovering it for everything it is. That was the first thing. And then so it started with all those books set in tiny American towns, which you alluded to on my kind of somewhere on my profile on my website probably already. It started with that. Then I started traveling it, and then it was kind of there were so many ways to go back to that. But then from there, it sprang into the rest of the world. I mean, I wasn't just reading American books back then, but I was really binging on them. And then, I just realized that novels can take you anywhere. So for me, it's the connection to place more than anything else. That's what gets me excited about a book. I'm literally just, funnily enough, then it can be a nonfiction. The last 12 days, I've been lucky enough to read books and an interview here at the shop. Both Sarah Wheeler, who is a brilliant, brilliant travel writer, who's just written a memoir about her life traveling everywhere, especially the poles, you name it. And then Benedict Allen, who is an incorrigible explorer, prone to embedding himself in the Papua New Guinean jungle for years at a time. And again, has seen more things than any of us are going to see. And now I'm reading, because just having read it, I've picked up Sybil Bedford's book about traveling to Mexico in the 1950s. I've just started reading it.
She did a biography of Huxley, right?
I think she did. Yeah. And she wrote at least two particularly brilliant novels. But
Jigsaw,
many more. She wrote Legacy and Jigsaw.
Yeah.
There is another one as well that was very popular here with one of my colleagues. Name has escaped me a minute. But her book, The Journey or The Visit to Donna Tavio, again, that book, it just transports you to a slightly privileged version, but still 1950s America, and then traveling down to Mexico. What was this like? What was the landscape like? What were the people like? What was the journey like? And how much the way, even if you're reading it and thinking, wow, this is not how some people would speak of some of the things they have seen now, if they were writing it now, it just gives you an insight into how people engage with it then. It's fascinating. So, yeah.
So wait a minute. Please don't tell me your favorite American novel is On the Road. Please.
No, can't bear it. I love road trip books. I absolutely love road trip books. I would find it very difficult to say what my absolute favorite American novel was, but I'm much more inclined to.
What's your favorite road trip novel then?
What's my favorite road trip novel? I just read. I'm not even sure I can answer that. Well, yeah, maybe it's a bit of a weird one. Maybe The Wayward Bus by Steinbeck, actually, which principally takes place at a bus stop, and the road trip is very late. But there's a history of that. I mean, Amor Towell's Lincoln Highway barely involves a road trip, even though it's ostensibly or one.
Right.
But I like a dysfunctional road trip. I'm just gonna, because I'm very bad at saying what my all-time favorite of any kind of subgenre
Yeah, well,
is.
they change they do change,
Yeah.
of course.
But I just read Norwood by Charles Portis. That is one of the more dysfunctional road trip novels.
Yeah.
And maybe my favorite recent road trip novel from the last 7 or 8 years is Dodgers by Bill Beverly. When you first look at it, that is a crime novel. It begins in LA. It's a bunch of 4 kids. One of them gets involved in a terrible act of violence. They're living in a bad neighborhood. Young black boy gets involved in a act of violence. They need to get him out of the way, and he's also basically his cousin who runs the gang that he's part of says, "Look, you've got to redeem yourself. We need you to go and kill this judge. We need you to go and kill this judge. He's a white man and he lives in somewhere like Ohio." So what you suddenly end up with is a very ill-conceived road trip with 4 young black men. They're all dysfunctional in their own way, all teenagers only. Like the one in charge and they're full of bravado, full of swagger. And then the minute they leave LA, it all goes away because they realize that this is a very different landscape and not one that they are used to navigating, and a very white dominated landscape where suddenly they're a lot more visible in a negative way for them. And this book is so interesting in how it talks about, it's a crime novel, it's a road trip novel, it's a novel of brothers and friends. Yeah, it's a really great book.
What's it called again?
Called Dodgers, and it's by Bill Beverly.
Dodgers.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bill Beverly.
I've been rereading over the past month Clive James's Cultural Amnesia, and the reason I think of that is that he's got these magnificent aphorism laden profiles. It's about 100 sort of culture makers throughout the 20th century. But Alan Moorhead gets so much praise
Really?
He's Australian. I had no idea he was Australian.
Okay.
But anyway, I think it's the cat's ass.
Yeah, I like Clive James a lot, and I've looked at Cultural Amnesia many times, and the pure scale of it makes me realize it's one I just have to sort of put in between other books and work my way through.
It's magnificent. I can't speak highly enough of it. But I just want to thank you for a free conversation here. I didn't have to pay the book spa fee or anything.
Well, that's all right, because you don't get the £60 of books either, so that seems fair.
Well, next time I'm in Bath, maybe I'll spend that in your store. I'll be happy to.
Brilliant. We'd love to show you around. I'd love to show you around when you come.
That's great. So Nic Bottomley is the co-owner of Mr. B's Emporium of Delightful Reading. Is that it?
Reading delights. But don't worry, it's been done many times in many ways.
Okay, it's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.